into this world that a movie named Claudine arrived. On the surface, it looked like a simple love story. A single mother, 6 children, and a man who wanted to love them all. It was about trying to build a family when every dollar mattered, every decision mattered, every mistake mattered. But beneath the romance was a story about survival, pride, family, and dignity. And for thousands of Black families, love wasn't the only thing standing in the way. There were rules, paperwork, investigations, and choices that no family should ever have to make. That's why Claudine wasn't just another movie. It became part of one of the most important conversations in Black America. The conversation about love, responsibility, government, fathers, mothers, and survival. Conversation we're still having today. Before we can understand why Claudine became part of a national conversation, we first have to understand Claudine herself, because she wasn't a politician. She wasn't an activist. She wasn't trying to make history. She was simply trying to make it to tomorrow. Claudine is a single mother raising 6 children in Harlem. Every day begins with responsibility. Breakfast, school, work, bills, and somehow finding enough strength to do it all again tomorrow. She isn't presented as perfect. She's tired, sometimes frustrated, sometimes overwhelmed, but she's determined. And that's what made audiences connect with her. Hollywood had shown Black families before, but not like this. These children talked like real kids. They argued. They joked.
Well, your son just broke the toaster.
I was making a melted cheese sandwich. I forgot.
Don't tease him.
They teased each other. They felt like people many viewers actually knew. For many Black families, this wasn't just entertainment. It looked familiar. It sounded familiar. It felt like home. Then comes Rube, played by James Earl Jones, a sanitation worker with big dreams, even bigger pride, and just enough charm to make Claudine wonder, could love still have a place in her life?
Chateaubriand and Cherry's Jubilee and Clam's Casino. Can you dig that? And she's going with me and she's going to have a good time. Can you dig that?
Rube isn't a superhero. He's just trying to be a good man. He's working, trying to provide, trying to build something better. And that's important, because it challenges one of the biggest stereotypes about Black men that existed during that era. Watching them together, you can feel something growing, not just romance. Hope. Hope that maybe 2 people who had been knocked around by life could still build something beautiful. That's what makes Claudine so remarkable. It doesn't pretend life is easy. It doesn't pretend love solves every problem. Instead, it asks a simple question. Can love survive when the world keeps getting in the way? It's easy to watch Claudine as a romantic comedy, but audiences in 1974 saw something else. They saw themselves, their neighbors, their families, their struggles, their dreams. But to really understand why this movie struck such a nerve, we have to leave the movie theater and step into America in 1974. Like and subscribe, okay? Let's leave the theater and step into Harlem. To understand Claudine, we first have to understand Harlem. Harlem was one of the main characters. For decades, Harlem had been the cultural heart of Black America. It was the home of artists, musicians, writers, activists, and families chasing the American dream. I visited Harlem in the 70s. I was about 9 years old. I visited cousins who lived there. I remember the busyness of the city. I remember the vibe and the noise. There were people everywhere. I can say it was the best summer of my life. But by the time Claudine was released, Harlem was changing. Factories had closed. Good-paying jobs were becoming harder to find. Many buildings had fallen into disrepair. Families who had worked hard all their lives suddenly found themselves struggling. Yet, despite those hardships, Harlem never lost its heartbeat. The music, the churches, the beauty salons, the neighborhood cookouts, the laughter of children jumping rope on the sidewalk. Life continued. That's one of the things I love about Claudine. It doesn't show Harlem as a place without hope. It shows people finding joy, even when life was difficult. You know, that's something I miss about those days. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Kids played outside until the streetlights came on. Neighbors looked out for one another. There was a real sense of community. Watching Claudine reminds me of that very apartment. Every sidewalk, every corner store feels lived in. That's because much of what we're seeing wasn't Hollywood pretending. It reflected a world that millions of Americans recognized. But behind every smile, there was another story. Bills, inflation, rising food prices, rent, and parents trying to make impossible choices.
Yeah, so you told us to be afraid, right?
You better be afraid. You better be afraid. That world out there will kill you.
I mean, how can frightened people change anything?
They ain't no other kind of people, Charles. I'm scared all the time, but I do my job. If you ain't scared, you don't have no need for guts.
That's the world Claudine wakes up to every morning. And that's why this movie feels so real. It isn't just telling one woman's story of thousands of families. It's telling the story, trying to hold everything together. But there was another challenge, one that wasn't always visible. It wasn't found on the streets or inside the apartment. It was found in government offices, on application forms, and inside policies that would spark a debate we're still having today. Sometimes, the hardest battles aren't fought in the streets. They're fought across the kitchen table, with a stack of bills, a government application. In Claudine, we watch a mother trying to provide for 6 children. But behind the romance, behind the laughter, behind the family, there was another story unfolding. One of the most memorable characters in the movie isn't a family member at all. It's the welfare investigator. Her visits create tension, not because she's portrayed as evil, but because she represents a system with rules. Rules that reached into people's homes and influenced deeply personal decisions.
Get into trouble.
No, I ain't been working.
Mrs. Price, you know I'm your friend, but you have to be honest with me.
I ain't been working.
Well, I understand a man's been visiting you regularly this past month.
You are not supposed to spy on us.
I didn't spy on you, Mrs. Price, but someone has.
It must be that lady, that bitch across the street. She'll say anything, that bitch.
The thing is, Mrs. Price, if something comes out later and I don't know about it, you'll be in all kinds of trouble. So, if you've been seeing this man...
Well, what is this? Am I not supposed to see a man? What am I, a damn nun?
No, but if you've been sleeping with a man and he's been giving you things, I'm sorry, but I have to know.
Do you sleep with a man?
Now, that's none of your business.
It's none of your business either.
You're wrong, Mrs. Price. It is our business. This man may be bringing things into your home which you may not be deducting. Now, you know I have to deduct you on those things.
For many viewers, this wasn't just fiction. It reflected questions families were asking in real life. During the 1960s and 1970s, aid to families with dependent children, commonly known as AFDC, provided financial assistance to many families struggling to make ends meet. For countless mothers, those benefits helped put food on the table and keep a roof overhead. But the program also became the center of intense public debate.
If I can't feed my kids, it's child neglect. Go out and get myself a little job on the side. I don't tell him. Then I'm cheating. If I stay at home, then I'm lazy. You can't win.
Critics argued that some welfare policies discouraged two-parent households. Supporters argued that these programs were essential for families with few other options. Those disagreements didn't begin with Claudine, and they certainly didn't end there.
Have it, right?
Oh, I didn't make the rules, sir. I'm only doing my job.
The welfare ain't doing nothing for me, lady.
But the welfare is supporting Mrs. Price.
In the film, Roop wants more than a relationship. He wants to be part of the family. Yet the movie quietly asks, what happens over the years when love and survival seem to pull in different directions? One idea has been repeated again and again, that welfare encouraged Black women to choose government assistance over marriage and pushed Black fathers out of the home. It's a claim that continues to spark passionate debate.
Giving aid only when a husband is absent pushes the man out of the house. His presence is an economic hardship, and a whole class of women and children are growing up in the northern ghettos knowing neither husband nor father, only dependence on welfare.
But is that really what happened? Or is the story more complicated? To answer that question, we have to leave opinion behind and look at the evidence. By the time Claudine arrived in theaters in 1974, a debate had already been growing in America. It wasn't just about welfare. It wasn't just about poverty. It was about family, responsibility, opportunity, and who or what was responsible for the challenges facing so many Black communities. One of the most influential voices in that conversation came nearly a decade before Claudine was released. In 1965, Assistant Secretary of Labor Daniel Patrick Moynihan wrote a report titled The Negro Family, The Case for National Action. Today, it's commonly called the Moynihan Report, and few government reports have generated more debate. The report argued that the high number of Black children growing up in female-headed households was creating long-term social and economic challenges. It warned that family instability could make it even harder to overcome generations of discrimination and poverty. To some readers, the report raised important concerns that deserved attention. Others believed it placed too much blame on Black families, while overlooking larger forces already reshaping American cities. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, many manufacturing jobs that had once supported working-class families began disappearing from cities across America. Unemployment increased. Inflation rose. Stable jobs became harder to find. These economic changes affected families of every race, but they often hit Black workers especially hard because of long-standing barriers to employment and housing. So when people looked around, they saw more single mothers, more families struggling, more people relying on public assistance. The question became, why? Some people answered, the welfare system. Others answered, the economy. Still others pointed to discrimination, education, housing, or the lack of good-paying jobs. That's one of the reasons Claudine still matters today. It doesn't give us easy answers. It gives us people. People trying to love, trying to work, trying to survive, while living inside a system far bigger than themselves. And perhaps the truth wasn't just one thing. Growing up, I remember hearing people say, women chose welfare over men. For years, I accepted that without ever asking where the idea came from. Making this documentary made me realize history is almost never as simple as the stories we inherit. So, what does the actual evidence tell us? Did welfare push Black fathers out of the home? Or have we been asking the wrong question all along? Before we answer one of the biggest questions surrounding Claudine, we have to do something that's becoming increasingly rare. We have to slow down, set aside assumptions, and look at the evidence. For decades, many Americans have repeated the same idea, that welfare caused Black fathers to disappear from the home. It's a belief that has shaped conversations, politics, and public opinion. But history is rarely explained by a single cause. In the decades following World War II, manufacturing jobs provided stable incomes for millions of working-class Americans. Those jobs became a pathway into the middle class. But by the late 1960s and throughout the 1970s, many factories in cities like New York, Detroit, Chicago, and Cleveland began closing or relocating. As those jobs disappeared, unemployment rose. Families felt the impact. Black workers were often hit especially hard because many had only recently gained access to these industries. They were among the first affected when opportunities declined. Fewer stable jobs meant greater financial stress on families. Housing also played a role. Decades of redlining, discriminatory lending, and residential segregation limited where many Black families could live and build wealth. These weren't individual choices. They were policies that shaped neighborhoods for generations. The Moynihan Report argued that the increasing number of female-headed households deserved serious attention. It warned that family instability could make it harder to overcome poverty. But the report also emphasized the effects of unemployment, discrimination, and unequal economic opportunity. Over time, many people remembered only one part of the report while forgetting the larger context it described. I'll be honest, before I started researching this documentary, I had heard the same story many of us have heard, that Black women chose welfare over Black men. But the more I researched, the more I realized history doesn't fit neatly into a slogan. The reality is more complicated and more human.
85% of the head of household is a woman, because most of the men who should be in the household, they cannot make a decent living.
That's why I believe Claudine still matters. It doesn't present statistics. It presents people. It shows a woman trying to keep food on the table, a man trying to find steady work, children trying to make sense of the adult world around them, and a family trying to stay together under extraordinary pressure. Maybe the question was never, did welfare destroy the Black family? Maybe the better question is, what happens when families face unemployment, discrimination, rising costs, limited opportunities, and a complicated public assistance system, all at the same time? 50 years after Claudine premiered, we're still debating many of the same questions. But one thing hasn't changed. Behind every statistic, every government report, every political argument, there are real people, real mothers, real fathers, real children, and real families doing the best they can. This has been The Story Behind the Story. I'm Yolanda. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this episode made you see Claudine in a new way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if there are other classic Black films you'd like us to explore together, let me know. Until next time, keep watching, keep questioning, and keep the stories alive.